Hi, I'm Craig Phillips. In this video, I'm going to show you how to install acoustic wall paneling on a flat wall like this. Now, I'll be showing you two different starting points for your first panel. These boards I'm installing are 2.4 meters high and 600 millimeters wide. I'm going to be fitting them all the way across one wall in our office to make a fantastic feature wall. Now, I've got a couple of samples here. I wanted to show you how these interlock together because they're fitted like this. One will be started against the wall, and in this one will interlock around the back of that lip. And when we look at it along here, you'll see that this has a kind of a gap in here, and this one has a more or less a tongue on there, and they will interlock in like this, giving you an equal size gap in between all the panels and the joints. Now, fitting your first panel is quite important because the first panel dictates where the rest of them are going to be, of course. We're starting off on the right-hand side, so the interlock in, and we work our way to the left. But first, we need to distinguish whether this wall is level or not. We're out just a couple of millimeters at the top, and that's the length of this spirit level. So if I place a board up on here and make that go flush with the wall, you'll see that I've got a small gap at the bottom there and a larger one at the top, meaning my wall isn't level. So we've got a couple of options of what we can do with this. We can either put a piece of masking tape up against this adjacent wall there and paint a black line down there just with matte black, and then once this panel is fitted to there, any little gap that we do see down that side, of course, is going to be black, and it's going to look just like the felt behind it. Or we can get our trimming knife, which is what I'm going to do, and trim down this first strip off, and then I'll cut my felt higher at the top, narrowing it down to nothing at the bottom, and hopefully that should fit nice and snug then in the corner and give me a level edge here to start working from. Now, unfortunately, on my wall behind me, if I start with a full panel and work my way across here, when I get to the end, my last piece will be a cut, and sadly, it'll go right between a slat, which is what I really don't want to be doing. I don't think it'll be aesthetically balancing on the eye. So what I'm going to do is start from the very center and work my way out. That way I've got equal cuts either side. Now I've found the center point of my wall. I'm placing one of the panels on the floor and I'm buttoning it up to the skating board just on my mark. Now, I'd advise you at home to do a dry run of these before you fix them to the wall. Lay them down, interlock them in, and work your way out just to measure them gaps either side. What you've got to bear in mind is the way these are designed, you've got a recess under one side, and then the felt here is stepping out a little bit, so they interlock in there to hold better into position on the wall. So you might find at home, which I have to do with this size wall, once you've dry run them, you might have to tweak that just by a couple of millimeters so you can get a nice equal cut either end. Before you drill any holes in the wall, always check that there is no pipes or wires behind the plaster by using a detector. Place the first board in the center of the room where you did your mark earlier. Double check its level using a spirit level. Take a pencil or a marker pen and do a couple of marks on each side. Now, using my spirit level, I'm drawing 5 level lines across the wall. These are going to be my fixing points for the screws and plugs. Each panel will require 15 individual screws at 5 different levels on the board. Offer the board back in position over the lines and drill 3 individual pilot holes across each line. Then using a marker pen to highlight where the drill holes are. Use a 6mm masonry drill bit with a hammer action drill to drill through the plaster and into the blockwork. Now the holes are drilled, apply your red 6mm plugs. Push them in as far as you can with your thumb and then finish them off till they're flush with the hammer. Offer the board back into position and start to drive the screws through the pilot holes using a cordless screwdriver. So that's the first panel now fixed into position with 15 individual drywall screws. The next stage is start putting the second and the third one on. That's the first 4 panels now fixed into position without being cut. The 2 either side will have to be cut down for the width and also cut around both sockets. Now on your wall, if you started like me in the center and worked your way out, you're probably going to have to do 2 cuts for either end. Just be careful when measuring them. Of course, you butt right up to the wall, and when you measure to your last panel, remember it tucks behind there about 5 or 6 millimeters where that tongue just clips underneath. So bear that in mind when measuring, and also measure the bottom and the top as well, because your walls might be leaning out a fraction or leaning in. You have to take that into account. Now you've got your measurements from the top and the bottom, these can be transferred onto your boards. But one thing to remember, although this board is on the right hand side, when you're marking up your measurements, mark it from the left hand side here, where the felt foam hooks behind that. So we're going that way with it, and we're cutting off the right hand edge. Now my measurements for my bottom here is just on 590 mil. So basically, just as I didn't want to happen, but my measurement falls right on the end of that slat. So that means I would have to cut with my circular saw all the way up to this end. And it wouldn't even be a straight cut because my wall is out of fraction. So I don't want to cut the slat, but it is a personal choice. If you want to do it, you can do it. What I'm going to do is turn this over, and I'm going to take out my long nose pliers, and I'm going to remove this one slat. So when you press into them, there's one here, you press into them, you can grab them and pull them out like that. These are held in really well. They're made good. Okay, so this slat, yep, should slide out. There we go, we don't need that one. And what we'll find on the other side of here is we have a wider piece of the felt now across here, which I'm going to trim down and shape into that wall. Take my measurement again from the left hand side, mark it on here. And use a yellow felt tip pen just to mark on there, but if you've got a little bit of chalk, that would help. There we go. I'll get my spirit level. Once you've scored right the way through that, you should just slice through quite easy with your trimming knife. Yeah, that'll flatten in there now, nice and tight in that corner. It is always worth just taking a small bit off at a time. Cut it maybe 2 or 3 millimeters too big, and that just gives you that opportunity then to nip out any little tiny discrepancies on the wall, because remember, it's easy to cut off little small bits, you can't add them on. Now I'm ready to measure, mark up and cut around the sockets. So I'm just using a handsaw here as a set square, because it's long enough then to mark up across the slats. Now, if you're a little bit unsure, but it's the first time you're doing this, I'd advise you, whatever your measurements are, always measure twice and cut once. And maybe step it in a couple of millimeters, 2 or 3, 4 millimeters, because like we mentioned along the side, it's easier to cut a little bit more off to get a nice snug fit. You can't just put a little bit back on. So I'm going to double check my measurements. I won't shout out my measurements because yours are going to be different at home. But just really take your time. Start by drilling 4 small holes, 1 in each corner, using a 3mm drill bit. This will then give you the corner points on the opposite side. Draw them out with your pen, then using a sharp trimming knife, cut away the felt around all 4 sides. Push it through from the underside and then trim it off so you've got a rectangular square shape the size of your socket. Then using your jigsaw, slide the blade between the slats and start to cut in a straight line. Do the same on the opposite side. Then using a light piece of sandpaper, you can lightly sand the cut edges to make them smoother. Okay, now let's see if it fits. Brilliant, that'll work for me. Right, I'm going to pop a couple of little pilot holes through there, just the same as we did on the other boards. Take it back off, put my plugs in position and drive the screws in and hold it in situ. Perfect. So that's this side complete. I'm going to do the same with the cut on the opposite side. So that's my full panels now complete to both sides. They're trimmed down and fitting snug on each side, and they're also cut around the two sockets. All that's left for me to do now is cut some more small strips where they'll sit directly on the top of here. I've also fitted mine directly on top of the skating board. This is a personal choice of yours. If you don't have a skating board on or you want to take it off, you can start right onto the floor. It doesn't matter whether it's a hardwood, softwood, a laminate floor, a carpet, tiles, it doesn't matter. Straight down on the floor, it still looks fantastic. Now I've cut my first kind of slither down for going across the top. It's about 130 millimeters in length. However, when we look closely on the boards, I don't know if you'll see here because it's very dark and black, but the pins that hold all these slats into place are about 220 to 250 apart. Now don't get me wrong, these are solid, they're made really well, they're literally firmer and solider than any others I've seen on the market. However, when I've cut a really thin slice like this between that, they're only held in with one lot of the pin. So look, I've got this situation, which isn't a problem, not a problem whatsoever. They're easy to line back up because the offcuts that you've got to put in there, and that's the same size gap. So what I'm going to do is put a little spot of adhesive underneath each one of those and then apply some multi-use adhesive on the back of this. And then when I place it into position, I line it up exactly in line with these main boards on there. I have cut one end off and also cut a little bit off the black edge there, just so I know they're in line, because remember we had to trim them down for that wall, and that continues my line going across all in line with this lot. Now, if we look closely at our double sockets, they may appear to be sunken quite deep behind the board. That's because our sockets themselves are real thin slimline ones. They only stand proud probably about 2 or 3 millimeters from the plasterwork, and that gives the impression it's real deep. We can still use it, of course. However, most sockets, standard sockets, are these plastic ones, or they could be metal ones, and they stand proud about 12 or 15 millimeters. So of course, if you've got ones like this, they will stand out that little bit closer to the edge. Alternatively, you could get your electrician. Now, we don't advise you to do this if you're not a qualified electrician, of course. They could disconnect the face of your socket and bring the back box forward, and in that way, when its face is fitted back on, it'll be more flush to the surface. And of course, you can always paint the top of your cut edges of the board there. That's how quick and easy it is to install your own acoustic panel walls. And don't forget, you can hang pictures and fit shelves to this type of acoustic panel walling. If you're looking for more how-to videos, don't forget to subscribe and follow us on all social media handles. But if you're just looking for inspiration, check out the website, wallsandfloors.co.uk.